Do you lie awake in bed at night unable to get to sleep? Or maybe you wake up continuously throughout the night. Perhaps you sleep through, but wake in the morning feeling like you haven't slept at all. This was me a few years ago, and it led to me experiencing a lot of fatigue throughout the day, which made any form of activity or concentration very challenging. So in this video, I'm going to go through 10 ways that you can improve your sleep so that you fall asleep within 20 minutes and stay asleep throughout the night, just as I do now. Stick around for tip number 10 at the end of this video, which I've only been using for the past 3 months, but it's been a game changer for my sleep. Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Mahin, and I'm a physiotherapist specialising in pain management based in the UK. On this channel, we explore lifestyle strategies and tools to help people manage pain and create healthier and happier lives. Today, I'm going to be sharing 10 tips to help you maximize your sleep quantity and quality, or to help your patients get a better night's sleep. So let's get into it. So I've always struggled with sleep throughout my life, and it used to take me up to 2 hours to fall asleep at night. This was until I was forced to make some changes a few years ago because I was really struggling with fatigue. As my fatigue was worsening, I started to research the best ways to improve sleep, and I started to put these to the test. And the results were almost unbelievable. I went from taking almost 2 hours to fall asleep at night to falling asleep within 20 minutes after a couple of months. I then started talking about this on the pain management programs that I was leading, and people were finding that actually the tips that I was sharing was really helping their pain and their fatigue. Before I go into these 10 tips though, I think it's really important that I tell you a little bit more about sleep. The amount of sleep that we require varies from individual to individual, but typically adults require between 7 to 9 hours of sleep. Now, really shockingly, over a third of adults worldwide report getting less than 7 hours sleep. And you might be watching this video thinking, yeah, I don't even get 7 hours sleep. So make sure that you carry on watching for the 10 tips I'm going to talk about in a moment. But it isn't just the amount of sleep that's important, it's also the quality. We each go through multiple sleep cycles at night, which consists of stages of light sleep and deep sleep. As you can see, each cycle from stage 1 to REM sleep lasts around 90 minutes. It's really important to go through all of these stages and cycles during the night, as the deeper levels of sleep are responsible for the recharging of our brain and our body. Ensuring we get the right amount and quality of sleep is vital for our cognitive functions, such as our memory and concentration and the clarity of our thoughts, as well as our long-term health. We know from sleep studies involving people with persistent pain, especially chronic widespread pain conditions, is that they lack the deep sleep that's responsible for cognitive function and restoration. And this is why difficulties with short-term memory, concentration, unrefreshed sleep, and finding the right word for things are looked for when we're diagnosing conditions such as fibromyalgia. We can think of sleep like clothes in a washing machine. If the machine does not go through all the different cycles for the required time, we will be left with dirty laundry at the end. This is the same with sleep. We need to get 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep every night to ensure we are functioning well throughout the day. As well as helping manage pain and fatigue, good sleep reduces the risk of long-term conditions such as heart conditions, diabetes, some forms of cancer, and also Alzheimer's disease, as well as lowering levels of anxiety, improving our weight control, and improving our energy levels, concentration, and productivity. So having gone through some of the theory, let's now go into 10 ways that you can improve your sleep. So we have two main hormones that are involved with sleep. We have our sleep hormone, which is melatonin, and our stress hormone, which is cortisol. Now, it's really important that those hormones are at their optimal levels before we go to bed at night. So first thing in the morning when we wake up, typically we want our melatonin, our sleep hormone, to be at its lowest level. And we want that then to rise throughout the day so that it's its optimal level before we go to bed at night. Now, it's the opposite for cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And this stress hormone isn't a bad hormone. It's really important for our alertness and our concentration in the day. So actually, as we're waking up, we want that level to be rising, and we want it to peak. Typically, for most people, that's around kind of mid-morning to late morning. And then we want that stress hormone level to decrease throughout the day, ready for sleep at night. Now, there's plenty of things that we can do to help get those hormones in gear and make sure that they are rising and falling at the right times throughout the day. But the most important thing is making sure that we're going to bed and waking up at the same time each day. This allows our 24-hour clock to get into some sort of rhythm, and it knows then that, okay, at this time in the night, I should be preparing for sleep, and in this time in the morning, I should be waking up. And what it allows our body to do is it allows us to regulate those hormones better, so they're at their optimal levels when we're waking, but also when we're sleeping at night. And this includes waking up and going to bed at the same time every day. So even on the weekends, trying to not let it vary too much. An hour here or there doesn't make a massive difference, but you want to try and keep it as close as you can, again, so that we're not kind of waking up really, really fatigued on the Monday morning when we go back to work because we've had a different sleep pattern throughout the weekend. Basically, if we're going to bed at different times on different days, then our hormones don't really know what to do. So they don't know whether it's time to prepare for sleep or whether it's for us to be called into action. So sometimes setting something like an alarm, obviously in the morning like we normally do, but also setting an alarm or a notification on your phone telling you that it's time to go to bed. Kind of like a prompt like your mum used to give you when you were a kid, you know, it's time for bed now. That can be really, really helpful. So the wind down routine may include making no screens before bed a rule. So the light that it's emitted by screens, so laptop screens, phone screens, TVs, they all mimic the outdoor natural light that we get throughout the day. So when we're looking at these screens a lot before bedtime, it's actually telling our body that it's daytime because it's emitting the same kind of blue light. And if it's telling our body that it's, it's daytime, then again, those sleep hormones are not in the right place for when we need to go to bed at night because they're thinking it's during the day, it's time to be awake. So try and limit the use of screens 90 minutes before you go to bed at night. Now you can also turn on the night mode to come on slightly earlier in the evening, and night mode basically takes away some of the blue light from the screens. But it still does allow a lot of blue light to come through, so it's not as good as just not using the screens before bed. It's also important to try to reduce the amount of artificial light that you're getting in your home. So that can be from kind of turning the main lights off and just having some lamps on, or even lighting some candles before you go to bed at night. And reducing this artificial light helps promote the release of melatonin, our sleep hormone, which helps us then fall asleep quicker. It's also important to try and reduce the amount of stressful activities we're doing right before bed. So that might be things like looking at emails, watching the news, or engaging in any kind of heavy form of exercise. And we can replace this with more relaxing activities such as reading, listening to music, or even a bit of meditation. If I'm completely honest, I really struggle with a 90-minute wind down routine, and I've got mine down to about 60 minutes at the moment. And that 60 minutes will involve me kind of turning off all screens or not looking at any screens. And it will involve me kind of going through some breathing exercises and reading before bed. If you're struggling with 90 minutes or even 60 minutes, start off small. So start off with 15 minutes. So say to yourself, right, for the 15 minutes before bed, I'm not going to look at a screen. I'm going to replace it with maybe reading a book or something like that. You can always build up from there then, increase that to 30 minutes, 45 minutes, and 60 minutes after. So a cool, dark and quiet environment is ideal for sleeping. If you haven't got these already, sometimes fitting blackout blinds or curtains can be really helpful to reduce any light that's coming from outside, whether that's kind of street lighting, car lighting, whatever that. The ideal room temperature for sleep is around 17 to 18 degrees. So in the summer, you might want to consider opening a window to allow your room to be nice and cool. Or in the winter, you might want to consider turning down or turning off the heating. You may also want to remove all the screens from your room to reduce the temptation just to watch that next Netflix episode or scroll through social media before you go to bed at night, or if you wake up in the night. I found that charging my phone in a different room is really, really helpful because it means that I'm not reaching for that phone before I go to bed, or even first thing in the morning when I wake up. It can be really tempting throughout the day just to jump onto your bed to do some work, answer some emails, watch Netflix, or just sit there staring at your phone. But this can be really counterproductive for sleep at night because what our body does then is it associates our bed with a place of wakefulness rather than a place of rest. And then when we want to sleep at night, our body doesn't allow us to do that because it's not associating that place with a place of sleep. And only using a bed for sleeping also involves us getting up in the night if we've been lying awake for more than 20 or 25 minutes. I know this sounds counterproductive, but if we're lying in bed struggling to get to sleep, then again, our brain is just associating that bed with a place of being awake. So make sure you get up just for a short period, and do something, not stressful, not looking at a screen, whatever it might be. It might be reading, it might be listening to music again, it might even be going just downstairs to grab a glass of water, and then returning to bed once you're feeling sleepy. And I know this is easier said than done, but if this does happen, try not to focus on the amount of sleep you're not getting that night. And just accept that, okay, fine, you are going to get slightly less sleep that night and you may be slightly more tired tomorrow. But by accepting that, it's really, really helpful because it takes the pressure off you from trying to fall asleep. We know the worst thing for sleep is trying too hard to fall asleep. So yeah, just accept that you might be getting a little bit less sleep that night and take the pressure off yourself. The worst thing is the anxiety around sleep. So with more anxiety around sleep, the harder we try to fall asleep at night, the less likely sleep is to come. And then we feel tired the next day, and that increases the anxiety, it increases the pressure on us to fall asleep, and that cycle continues. That's one of the hardest things to break out of if you're in a cycle or a period of really bad sleep. And if you are kind of struggling to get to deep levels of sleep, don't worry, because you lying in bed at night is still good rest, so you still will be getting some of the benefits, although you won't be getting the benefits of the deeper levels of sleep. You'll still be getting some benefit, so it's not as if that time is wasted. So that can be helpful as well, to tell yourself when you are lying awake at night is, okay, let me just rest my eyes, I will be getting some of that benefit. This was a really hard one for me because I love my coffee. But caffeine is a stimulant and it has a half-life of between 6 to 7 hours. And what this means is that 6 to 7 hours after your, let's say, cup of coffee, half of it will still be in your system. In another 6 to 7 hours after that, a quarter of it will be in your system. So every 6 to 7 hours, half of the amount that's currently in your system is reduced by another half. So if you, let's say, have your last cup of coffee at midday, around 12 o'clock, at 6 to 7 o'clock, you're gonna have half of that cup of coffee still remaining in your system. And then at kind of midnight, 1 a.m., you're gonna have a quarter of a cup of coffee in your system. Now you wouldn't, before you go to bed, have a quarter cup of coffee, would you? So that's what can also affect sleep, is that stimulation that's still inside you. And I hear this all the time, that people say, but you know, I fall asleep fine after a cup of coffee. And that's fair enough. It's not about falling asleep quickly. What caffeine does is it significantly reduces our deep sleep and our REM sleep. So that's why we can wake the next morning feeling quite unrefreshed, like we haven't had a good night's sleep, even if we've been sleeping for the whole time, because we're not getting those deeper levels of sleep. And if you wake up feeling tired, you're more likely to drink more caffeine throughout the day to keep you alert, which then is going to reduce your deep sleep and REM sleep further the next night, which makes you wake up feeling unrefreshed again, and that cycle just continues going round. And if you're having any doubt about this, you know, trial it for yourself. So try either a caffeine detox, so not having any after midday, or even turning to decaffeinated drinks. Just be wary, some decaffeinated drinks do have a little bit of caffeine in them. But yeah, no caffeine after 12, and just see how it works for you. The results may surprise you. So the classic alcohol debate, which isn't really a debate, and people swear by the fact that alcohol helps them fall asleep quicker at night, and I have no argument with that, because it's the same with me. Alcohol makes me fall asleep a lot quicker than if I'm not drinking alcohol. However, although alcohol is a sedative, just like with caffeine, it significantly reduces our deep and REM sleep in the night. So that's what can lead us to feeling quite unrefreshed when we wake up in the morning. And it's that combination of the alcohol in your system, the dehydration, but the poor sleep and lack of good quality sleep that leads to the dreaded hangover in the morning, even if you've slept for 10 or 11 hours. And research has shown us that even just one glass of alcohol significantly reduces our sleep quality, restfulness, and physical activity then the next day, compared to when we don't drink any alcohol the night before. Now, I'm not saying that we should all go teetotal, because obviously there's those evenings where we want to enjoy a glass of alcohol. But what we need to know is having an awareness of what the alcohol is doing. So knowing that we might have poorer quality sleep that night. And it's really important that if you are struggling with sleep, that we don't use alcohol as a sleep aid, because actually it's just the worst thing in the long term, because we're not getting those deeper quality of sleep. And if you have an important day the next day, let's say that you've got an important work meeting or an important social event that you want to be really alert for, then make sure that we're avoiding alcohol the night before so that you can perform at your optimal level the next day. Drinking every evening would obviously have a long-term effect on your health just from the poor sleep quality alone. However, life is there to be lived, and enjoying some alcohol occasionally may provide more enjoyment and satisfaction than a good night's sleep could. And that probably would come without any long-term effects. So if that is the case, then cheers. A study into the effects of exercising earlier in the day found that it improves alertness throughout the day and also helps people feel more tired in the evening. Another study showed that those who exposed themselves to morning light between 8 a.m. and midday took on average around 18 minutes to fall asleep at night, compared to 45 minutes in those that didn't expose themselves to morning light. They also stayed asleep for longer and they slept deeper. This is because getting outside early in the morning and exposing ourselves to natural light helps shift our circadian rhythm. And this is our 24-hour clock. And this is by suppressing the secretion of our sleep hormone melatonin and increasing the release of other hormones such as cortisol. Cortisol, don't forget, is responsible for the increased concentration and alertness throughout the day. Melatonin secretion then begins again earlier in the evening in preparation for sleep. A way to get outdoors early in the morning is by stepping outside to have your tea or coffee, or even having your breakfast. You may even want to combine getting outside early with exercise in the day, and this might be in the form of kind of walking, gardening, or even some yoga outside. Our body temperature wants to be low when we're sleeping at night, but eating too close to bedtime, usually kind of after 8 p.m. or so, can mean that our body temperature is rising because it's having to digest all of our food. And it's this increase in body temperature that means it takes longer to reach a state of rest and recovery. On the flip side, it's important that we don't go to sleep hungry, because it's nothing worse than falling asleep to the sound of our tummy rumbling. So eat well and eat at the same time each day, but not too late. So many of us will be working from home now after the COVID pandemic, so this tip number 9 is more important than ever. And how easy is it for work to slip into the evening and interfere with our home life? If you're anything like me, that's definitely happened over the last couple of years, and I'm guilty to that. So previously we had quite a defined end to our day, which may be our commute home, and we would put some distance between work and home. However, now our commute is maybe from one room to the other room, if we're lucky enough to work from separate rooms. And that boundary is now less defined. So ensure that you have a strict end time for work, and tidy up your desk, turn off your work emails and work phone if you have one. And if you are working from a separate room, try not to enter that room again until the next working day. Performing an action to signal a definitive end to the day can also be really helpful. And this might be going for a walk, almost like a bit of a commute, you know, to have that break after work. But it could even be just something to signal the end of the day. So it could even be just saying to yourself, as you pack things away, this is the end of the day. And that can create a clear, defined boundary between your work then going into your evening. Before you complete whatever action this may be, write down all your tasks, even the incomplete ones, for tomorrow, so that you're not thinking about that and taking that into your evening. So here's the final tip, tip number 10, that has helped me so much over the past 3 months. So thanks for sticking around to listen to this one. So my main problem with sleep has always been my mind not switching off and racing at night. So even when I'm doing the 9 other things that I've talked about in this video, my sleep can still be quite poor because I'm taking ages to fall asleep because of that mind racing. So when I started journaling before bed, followed by 5 minutes of kind of mindful breathing, I've actually found that I'm falling asleep within 20 minutes 95% of the time. And this has been incredible for my alertness, performance, and concentration the next day. And I keep my journaling really flexible. I don't really have any rules. I just write down what's on my mind in that moment. I then do 5 minutes of breathing, paying attention to the flow of the breath in my body. I make sure that my out breath is slightly longer than my in breath, because this can just help calm down the stress response in preparation for sleep. And there are many apps out there that you can use that can take you through guided mindfulness practices such as Calm and Headspace. And just to be clear, this isn't a sponsored video, but I just find these apps are really helpful. So I know this has been a really, really long video with lots of things to implement, but I'd encourage you to only try 1 or 2 things that I've mentioned initially. Because if we try to do everything all together, it can just become really overwhelming and increase that stress around sleep, which we know is the worst thing for sleep. So choose 1 or 2 things that you feel you aren't doing at the moment and focus on these. You can always add more of them in later. The first one, if you're not doing it already to start with, is definitely going to bed and waking up at the same time each day, just to help that 24-hour clock kick into gear. Lastly, don't worry if you're not seeing immediate results. It can take a while for these things to work. It took me around 3 months to see significant results, although I was seeing some small changes way before then. But stick with it and be patient, because these things really do work. For more lifestyle strategies to ensure that you're at your optimal throughout the day, and those that have helped my patients improve their pain and improve their health, check out my lifestyle playlist. Thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next week.